Welcome to the ASI Pill. Special drop, Cerebras CEO Andrew Feldman, fresh off the $95 billion IPO, in conversation with Alex Wissner-Gross. Wafer-scale engines the size of a dinner plate, Fabs as pyramids, chips in orbit, and why Intel missed the cell phone? Let's go. Strap in. The Cerebras CEO just rang the bell for a $95 billion IPO. How did it feel?
It felt good.
And you had to work for it too.
It was super exciting for the team. We were able to bring a portion of the organization and their families and to share it. I mean, my parents were there and my wife and my stepdaughter, and we made it into a family event, and it was really something special.
And what does Andrew make of Karpathy joining Anthropic and the frontier lab gravity well?
Look, he is sort of one of the most important and prolific thinkers in the space, right? And not just, I think, as reflected in what he's built, but reflected in sort of how he's taught the community. And I think that's interesting. I think his point that there are a small number of frontier labs that are sufficiently far ahead that if you're not with them, you're not on the frontier, probably applies to hardware too. Right? That if you're not building hardware for or engaged with, at a fundamental level, one of the three labs, the three most important labs, Google, Anthropic, OpenAI, you are not seeing what they're thinking. And just like your ideas will drift if you're a model maker, your hardware will drift from what they need as well. And I thought that was really sort of, I applied that to our domain. And I think he has an extraordinary track record for useful stuff he's built. Extraordinary.
And what does the Cerebras founder think of the Elon and Sam billionaire pissing match?
For Cerebras, but was it relevant?
I think this was a giant distraction, and what billionaires in pissing matches interests me not at all. I think these are two of the most important thinkers of our generation. I think what Elon has built is breathtaking. I've met him, had dinner together. He's a polymath. He's a brilliant thinker. What Sam has built, sort of one of the fastest growing companies in the history of capitalism. But some of his ideas also in the invention of the safe at Y Combinator, these were enormously meaningful in the structure of Silicon Valley. I think everybody loses when they battle. I think, I want Elon building cool shit. I want Sam building cool shit. And I don't want to waste time or read about sort of disagreements. I just want sort of these guys doing what they're the best in the world at, which is building stuff. Yeah, and you're always welcome to come on by
thanks.
And enjoy the mojo that we've got going here. I mean, it's we try and create an environment where exceptional people can do extraordinary work.
On the ASI Pill, we want the origin story. How do you actually build a chip the size of a dinner plate, 58 times larger than any chip ever made?
We did. The founders had all worked together at my previous startup, and AMD bought that in 2012. And by 2015, we'd wandered off a little bit, and we started meeting, and we saw AI on the horizon. And what we knew was that this new workload would eat through extraordinary amounts of compute. And we made two really big bets. We made a bet that said, like graphics produced the GPU, and like mobile compute supported the development of the ARM processor, that this technology, this work, would be big enough to require dedicated silicon. And the second bet we made was that the right strategy wasn't to build a derivative of the GPU. That you needed to start with a clean sheet of paper, and you needed to do something fundamentally different. And these were enormously contrarian bets at the time, and both proved to be dead right. And from that foundation, we continued the innovative thinking, and we said, what AI is going to need is memory bandwidth. That's the sort of speed with which you can move data from memory to compute. And the way to innovate on that dimension is to use a different type of memory than everybody else uses, right? We have two types of memory. We have memory that can store a lot that's slow. We call that DRAM or HBM. And we have memory that is fast but can't store very much per square millimeter. And so what we hypothesized was that if we could build a chip the size of a dinner plate, right, a chip sort of 58 times larger than any chip ever built before, we could stuff it to the gills with SRAM, thereby overcoming its weakness in not being able to store very much per square millimeter and benefit from its strength. And that proved to be a very difficult problem to tackle. But when we got it, proved to be right. We are somewhere between 15 and 20 times faster than the GPU on any inference problem. And so the challenge along the way was that nobody had ever built a chip this big, not once in the 75-year history of the compute industry.
Yeah, they kept on slicing them thinner and thinner and smaller and smaller.
That's right. And that even sort of those on the sort of Mount Rushmore of our industry, people like Gene Amdahl, had failed, crashed and burned. And interestingly, even after we solved this problem, we had people come and visit our labs and then try and build it, and they also failed. And so what it took was years of perseverance and innovation, and all the credit goes to the engineering team, Gary and Sean and Michael and JP and the team we had. We failed for years. And in August of 2019, we announced we'd solved this problem that had been unsolved forever. And we thought everybody would rush to our door, and the world didn't care one bit. Didn't care.
Why?
Didn't care.
Why?
The world was utterly indifferent. And over the next, in the first generation, I think we sold 12 systems.
Wow.
And in the second generation, we sold 350. And in the third generation, we're selling many thousands. And so what happened was we solved this problem, and we're way ahead of the market. And it wasn't until 2024, late 24, early 25, that the models got fast enough and the models got smart enough that people wanted to use inference everywhere. And that's what happened. And sort of there we were with the fastest inference machines on Earth by orders of magnitude. And suddenly people wanted to use AI. And the way we use AI is with inference. And we were just crushed with demand. And then in December of 2025, we signed a deal with OpenAI north of $20 billion over several years, one of the largest deals ever signed in Silicon Valley. In March, we signed a term sheet with AWS for deployment in their data centers, and business has been pretty good since.
And which of all those bets does Andrew think were dead wrong?
I think that we got many bets wrong. And I think any CEO who looks back over a decade that moved as quickly as ours and says they got it all right is probably not a guy you want at your birthday party. We got an enormous amount wrong. But one of the things we got right was an understanding that we make AI with training and we use it with inference. And if AI is going to be smart and if it's going to be useful, you need to have an inference business. And that bit we saw early. And the real problem between 2020 and 2024, 25 was that it wasn't smart enough to be useful. And so everybody was focused and all the labs were talking about number of parameters. And now people don't care. The only question is, does it write good code? Does it give me good answers? Can it do things that I want done? And that's because we've moved into a regime, into a world in which it's useful, and that's how it's measured. And so Dave, we did recognize this. We are really good at training. But right now, there's such demand for fast inference, such overwhelming demand that we're allocating a lot of our attention to it.
I'm curious, Andrew. SRAM, you mentioned SRAM earlier. The largest models, really the standard models at this point that offer frontier capabilities, in some cases up to 10 trillion parameters. How do you think about SRAM when, correct me if I'm wrong, the Wafer-Scale engine version 3, I think, has maybe in the tens of gigabytes of SRAM? 40, 50, something like that. But the largest models are in the trillions of parameters. How do you think about the future of SRAM, given that, as you said, you're stuffing it to the gills?
Right. I think the following. I think that models that size have to be divided up, whether you're using GPUs or TPUs or us. They have to be cut up and they have to be spread over multiple chips. Right. Remember, models that size, Alex, they have a very large matrix multiply in the attention head. And that doesn't fit on a GPU. You have to cut it up and you have to go tensor model parallel. And you don't have to do that with us. But what you do have to do is spread that over 4, 6, or 8 chips. And what you do is you divide the model very carefully, and you divide it such that no layer runs over 2 chips. And so what you're moving, it results from one layer to the next. And you can move it because that's a very small vector. That's a results vector. You can move it over 100 gig Ethernet. And it is slower. That little hop is slower. But the calculations that take up such a big portion of the time are so much faster that you pay a very small penalty for breaking it up into 4, 8, 16, 20 chips on the order of 2%. Now, other SRAM solutions that are small, like, for example, Grok, that NVIDIA acquired, they have to break it up because they have only 800 square millimeters to use. They have to break a big model up over 2,000 or 3,000 chips. And each of those hops hurts their performance. While we have to do a few hops, they have to do thousands. And so there's no way ever to fit everything on any size, right, amount of memory. But there is a very nice and simple way for us to cleave models, to spread it over multiple chips. And yesterday we announced and posted numbers on Kimi K2, which is a trillion parameter model in the open source community. We were, of course, an order of magnitude faster than anybody else.
Oh, really? How many wafers on that deploy?
I forget. I've been busy. But it was about 1,000 tokens per second, where a really good GPU shop like Fireworks is running at 70.
Yeah.
All right. And so, and they're a really good shop. And so 15x, that's pretty good.
Yeah, Peter and I were at Google I/O yesterday, and they showed a whole rack of TPUs operating together, generating 1,400 tokens per second, writing code. And you see that, and you're like, I need that. I need that tomorrow.
Well, the trick there, Dave, sometimes is, and NVIDIA's been masterful at this sleight of hand, is not telling you whether they mean tokens per second per user or aggregate throughput.
Ouch.
Right? Yeah. The GPU is an extraordinarily good machine at generating slow tokens. Yeah. You can generate an NVL72 at 35 tokens per second, which is painfully slow, can generate millions of tokens. On the other hand, if you ask it to generate tokens at 200 tokens per second per user, it can support 1 or 2 users. That's a $4 million solution working on 1 user, right? And so it's really important when you sort of dig into these, are they telling you gross throughput? Is this a lot of customers who are unhappy with their performance? Or is this are they able to serve that to individual customers, and how many of them? Yeah. Because
Andrew, you said,
go ahead.
And what about Elon's Tera fab? How long does that actually take to build?
Look, I think Elon has proven himself on multiple dimensions. He's proven himself to be a visionary, right? The number of people said you're an idiot to try and build cars in Fremont. Right. I mean, we got the highest labor rates in the country, maybe among the highest in the world. We've got a regulatory regime that is unfriendly to business. The number of people who said you shouldn't build a rocket company. The number of people who didn't understand that he was building a rocket company because he wanted a satellite company he has been ahead of everybody for a very long time.
Okay,
And
but
so
your
that's
take
the
on-
vision
yeah.
side. That's the vision
Yes.
side. He's also been able to execute on some of them, not all. And that's what's cool, is he is trying to do things that other people can't do. Now, this particular problem I know a little bit about. And building fabs is very hard. And it is hard in a different way than some of the other problems he's attacked. I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm saying it will always take longer than he says. It will cost vastly more money. And that's the challenge of building extraordinary things. It is not a 5 or 10 year project in my humble view. I've been wrong before, but I put this at a 15 or 20 year project.
Wow.
I think it's interesting. It's probably good for the U.S. that we have domestic fabs. But I think that there is a reason why, even with the exact same equipment from ASML, right, Samsung and TSMC aren't at the same node. TSMC is ahead, and they're extraordinary. And the amount of received wisdom and learning from the fabs they've built over generations cannot be underestimated. But if anybody can do it, Elon can do it.
Then what is so hard about building a fab, really?
These things are hard to build, right? I mean, fabs are pyramids. They are our pyramids. And TSMC is the greatest manufacturing company on earth. And the challenge is these things take 5 years to build, 6 years to build, and $50 billion, $40 billion from the people who built the last one, right? And that's true whether it's TSMC or Samsung or any of the great builders here. These are unbelievably difficult to build. And that's why they've been behind schedule in the U.S. I think they encountered some challenges that were unforeseen. I think we have political challenges in that these things take a long enough time that they cross administration boundaries, right? When your projects can't be done in 4 years and have to cut across multiple administrations, maybe 2 or 3 different administrations, right? Over a period of time, when you have local ordinances that get in the way of building, as happened with Samsung's fab in Texas. They redesigned the fab because of a local fire ordinance that made no sense. These are painful problems that our system hasn't found a way to overcome. And so I think that we have to find sort of a way to do better, because I think the reshoring of fab, and not just the fab gets all the glory, but the packaging business is every bit as important, and something we lost entirely when the fabs left.
Yeah, actually, good question. By the time you get something ready to put into one of your data centers or a third-party data center, how many different manufacturing partners has that wafer been through?
A fair number.
Yeah,
a fair number. I mean, it goes to TSMC, and it goes to someone who ASE, who deposits RDL on the backside. It's diced, it's cleaned. It comes to us for a step. I mean, it is a long process. I think, when we stopped caring about fabs in the 90s, and IBM sort of left, and Global Foundries as fabs we didn't do anything to keep them. We lost this collection of surrounding expertise, right? When a chip comes off a fab, right, it's a dead piece of silicon. The package is how you breathe power and life into it, how you get I/O into it, and how you get power into it, and that's also an enormously challenging technology. It takes material scientists, it takes manufacturing engineering, process engineers, deposition engineering, and we punted all of that by not caring about this industry. And it's all sitting in Taipei and in Korea. The materials are manufactured in Japan. Kyocera is one of the leaders there. Yeah. And we got to get it all back. And we got to make a decades-long commitment to this industry.
And which fab does Cerebras actually use, and which one would they never touch?
We've committed our 3-nanometer design to TSMC, so that will take us out a little bit. We do manufacture some components at Samsung and have a great deal of respect for Samsung's fab capabilities. We have never used Intel. Lip-Bu is an extraordinary leader and a longtime advocate for hardware in Silicon Valley. As you know, Dave, there was a period between about 2007, 2006, and 2015 or 16 where every VC firm was filled with somebody from VMware who didn't know anything about hardware, who thought compute was made by flea feces in the cloud. And that there was some sort of thing in the ether that somehow was generating compute. And we tried to explain for a long time that the way you make more virtual compute is to begin with real compute.
Well, I got to tell you, you've inspired so many people that are in campuses right now that are eager to be part of your mission to get that back. So I'm going to route as many as I can through this building.
Please do. I mean, guys like Andy Bechtolsheim and Lip-Bu and a few others were continuing to put money into hardware, continuing to Pierre Lamont, continued to do it and support us as it was tough going to raise money over that time period. And I think while I know Lip-Bu, they've got a lot of work to do, and he's done great things so far, but they've got some work to do before we could move to Intel.
Alex or Salim, do you have a question?
What is the thing Cerebras quietly solved 7 years before NVIDIA even hit it?
The manufacturing process, what do you hope it shrinks to?
Well, I say the first one took 4 years and maybe $500 million, somewhere between $400 and $500 million. That's why I take it to dinner when I go with my wife. like a 10-year-old with his first dirt bike. I mean, it's coming to bed. Yeah. I mean, it's in the bedroom. It's not outside in the garage. It is being carried around everywhere I go. I got a wafer. I think the inventions cut across lithography, chip architecture, packaging,
cooling,
power delivery and cooling. They included sort of compiler inventions, algorithmic inventions. In fact, some of the hardest problems that we encountered were packaging. And, we solved them 7 or 8 years before others encountered them. So the B100 the B200 was 18 months late. And it was late because they had a problem with their CoaS.
What's that mean?
CoaS is a process step where TSMC uses a 65 nanometer chunk of silicon as a motherboard. And so they put on NVIDIA's chips and the memory, and instead of putting it on a green board, right, a traditional motherboard, they put it on a piece of silicon. And the wires are more efficient in silicon. They can be narrower. And so this was a big invention. But we knew that there would be a problem with the coefficient of thermal expansion. And we knew that because we'd solved that problem in 2018. And so there they were in 2024, 25, struggling with a problem that we'd solved 7 years earlier. And that's what happens when you do pioneering work, is you encounter problems, you have a chance to solve them long before the rest of the industry even encounters them and knows they're a problem. And so that is one of the joys. Obviously, in everything we do in engineering, there's a trade-off. The downside is there's some low days, right? There's some days you go home, and some of these days stack up. And we had about 18 months where we're spending $8 million a month, and we couldn't solve the problem. And when you have board meetings every 6 weeks, and you come in and you still can't solve it, and you're $100 million more in the hole. And then you're $120 million in the hole, then you're $140 million on the hole, and you still can't solve it. This is some low days.
And then you have the IPO of the year, and it's a high day.
That's right. I think, Peter,
it's such an archetypal story of an entrepreneur.
It's the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
It is. And I think, Salim, one of the things I've learned along the way, this is my 5th startup, is that this shit will kill you if you can't modulate the highs and the lows.
Yeah, it will.
And that for every entrepreneur, every CEO, and I tell them first that this is a pressure test on your soul. And second, the number of times you can get kicked in the gut before lunchtime and have it still be a good day as a CEO of a startup is amazing.
Would you rather be doing anything else?
No, this is all I know how to do. I'm a professional David in the battle with Goliath. This is what I know. I have no interest in doing other things, and I have no interest in working with people who are other than those who want to attack the hardest problems.
Yeah.
Amazing. Alex, please.
Speaking of the hardest problems, and it's almost in the name Cerebras, you have, I think, a 4 trillion transistor budget with your third generation wafer scale engine. I'd love to talk maybe a little bit about what's at the end of the rainbow, projecting out, say, 10 years when you're on your nth generation model. What does the future look like? Does it look like brain uploads running on WSE8? What's the killer app? What does this look like in 10 years?
So, Alex, I think one of the fun things about being an infrastructure builder is you don't have to have those ideas. No, really, that I was with the team, and many of them are here in the mid-90s, that helped drive down the cost of networking. We built some of the first and fastest Ethernet switches. And we had no idea that WhatsApp would arrive and that it would make possible even for the poorest members of our society to communicate home. And when I grew up in the 70s, the only thing I heard my grandmother say on the phone was, put your brother on, it's expensive. It was $4 a minute for my mother to call Australia, where her mother was. They spoke for 6 minutes a week. And the only thing I heard my grandmother say was, I'd say, hello, Bubba. She'd say, put your brother on, it's expensive. Right? And we put in a company called Yago, along with many others, with Juniper and others, we put a small brick in the wall that made the cost of IP transport so low that somebody else could invent a technology that made it such that every person can talk to their grandparents no matter how poor they are anywhere in the world. And that's something that we didn't know. That's not the problem I set out to solve, and our company set out to solve. We set out to solve a problem as an infrastructure builder that we build roads. And what you drive over those roads and how far you take them, that's other people's work. What we're trying to do is allow people to do extraordinary things on our infrastructure. And so when I think about what we're enabling, that's work for Sam. That's work for Ilya. That's work for others. What we're trying to do is make a compute platform on which their ideas can take flight. And what we know is you need faster calculations.
So what I think I heard you say is that you're very deliberately not having opinions as to the future shape of the workloads that will run on your infrastructure, and you're primarily at this point deferring to the frontier labs to steer the future architecture of workloads.
Today's frontier labs or new frontier labs, right? We are making bets that the world will continue to depend on sparse linear algebra as an underpinning for all these calculations.
And what is the killer app for the wafer-scale engine in space?
I think first we have serious advantage in space. In space, some of the most expensive work is the chip-to-chip communication, right? We've had chips in space for a long time. That's what a satellite is. A satellite looks like a PC motherboard with a big camera stuck on it, a big telescope, right? If you unpack what's in one of these small satellites, every computer hobbyist will say, "Holy cow! That looks like a server motherboard with a telescope stuck to it," and then it's hardened. Communicating in building a cluster is actually much more complicated because you have to do a lot of communication in this work. Moving the data from the LAN to the cluster is a problem that we've solved a long time ago. They will continue to improve it. So being a big chip and having to move things off chip less often is a huge advantage. I think this is an exciting domain. I think, like many hard problems, the last 10% don't take 10%, they take 90%, right? Self-driving is one of those categories, right? The last 10% we've been sitting at for 8 or 10 years, and we're just now sort of getting over the hump of the last 10% because it isn't really 10%. I've got it in the 7 to 10 year category.
So it's interesting, Andrew, just to pull on that very briefly, what I would have expected you to say to that would have been something like, with the wafer-scale engine, you had to design around faults. You had to be incredibly fault tolerant at wafer-scale. And in a space environment with lots of ionizing radiation, you also need to be fault tolerant. And that Cerebras, with its experience with fault tolerance at wafer-scale, is like the perfect computing platform for highly ionizing environments.
There are, I think we have lots of advantage, Alex, and you put your finger on one of them, that you have to try and sort of shield your silicon very differently in space, and you will get more flaws. And there are single bit errors, there are hard errors, there are a whole collection of errors that you have to contemplate, and our ability to shut down a core and route around it is an enormous advantage in that environment. I think we've got, as a community, some work to do over the next 4 or 5 years before we have sort of the truly hard part of getting them in space, orchestrating the software, getting them to communicate. So I've got it sort of out the better part of a decade before we have sort of production in space. I think it's a very sort of a worthwhile project to pursue, but it's out of the ways.
Which professions actually fall first to language models?
And it's down from 1,000 an hour.
Right? Yes,
that's number one. Number two, I think the problem with lawyers and accountants is the structure of their business is
wrong business model for the future.
Is exactly wrong.
Selling hours,
right? What their business is to stand between ordinary people and obscure knowledge. Right?
That's
what they do. I mean, that's what your accountant does. You don't want to figure out what the tax rules are with related to depreciation on a property you bought or was gifted to you in 2020. Right? Who wants to know that? And so what their business is sort of the acquisition of obscure knowledge and the application of that knowledge to particular problems. That's exactly what language
don't you
models
think, Andrew, that generalizes, though? Like, what are you other than a gatekeeper of obscure knowledge regarding the highest?
I so disagree with that.
What are we?
Andrew is just like an engineer's engineer.
When lawyers are at their best, they are actually, the reason they're called counsel is when they're giving good advice, not on legal matters, when they're giving good business counsel, when common sense is challenging in a confusing environment. Those are when they're at their best. I think when you're drafting, all the documents you need for most things have already been drafted. Right? Yes, yeah. We don't need another lawyer reviewing another NDA. We don't.
Andrew, let's give you next shot. Which question, 2, 3, or 4 you want to choose?
I think number 3 is interesting. I think
me too.
There is a profound misunderstanding about how.
So let's read the question. Why can't money buy Elon or Zuck a lead in AI? Can't they just buy the best talent? And that's from @NovaRift.
Great question.
No, the answer is no. And I think why couldn't Intel build a cell phone processor? At the time they had the best fabs. At the time they had the best computer architects. And they destroyed tens of billions of shareholder dollars failing. Same with AMD. It turns out in our industry that money and the acquisition of talent isn't enough.
What is?
There's something else. Well,
MTP.
What?
Purpose. Massively transformative purpose is incredibly important.
Intel could have said yes to Apple, though.
No, but they could have. But the truth is what led them to believe that they were in a position to say no to it?
Intel was chasing margins. Intel was infatuated with its own profits. They had an ARM division that they sold off. Intel could have sold off.
Maybe. Or maybe that there's something in your DNA that makes big mutations. Well, look, I'm sitting here saying all day long we'll take luck over skill. But I'll also say that all day long, that extremely hardworking people with tremendous grit end up more lucky. And that both of those 100%. Are true. That is life. It is really hardworking people over long periods of time who have integrity and ethics, right? They get lucky more often, and that's luck is not equally distributed to those who work hard and those who don't.
And why does the team with the most money lose again and again?
But I think, Alex, the question isn't, of course they could. Why didn't they? Why did they miss it? Why did AMD miss it? Why did, for example, why did NVIDIA fail for decades at everything that wasn't a GPU? They failed to build an ARM processor that worked. I think it was called Snapdragon. I think they failed at a Northbridge, Southbridge part. And they succeeded beyond anybody's expectations at a GPU. I think that the same question, I think, holds true for the Yankees. Right? No. Why doesn't the team with the biggest money win every year in the NFL? Why? I mean, there is something that we have, as in thinking about organizations and talent, that we don't do a very good job of describing, that says there is something that is very hard to buy and that has to be made, and that we don't seem to be able to articulate it well, and buying the most talent doesn't seem to be sufficient. It is, you have to have a lot of talent. It's necessary, but it's clearly not sufficient.
Yes, of course. Suffice it to say, I have some pretty different answers to some of these other questions, but I think I have to answer question number 2, which it looks like might have been a response to a comment that I made in a previous pod episode. So the question is, why wouldn't Sam, I think referring to Sam Altman, cut a deal with Bezos and Blue Origin to become the other counterweight to Elon? And this is from Scott Ray Broomfield. So I think the answer is that's probably on the table. If I were Sam, I would be exploring a variety of potential heavy launch partnerships to become a counterweight to Elon and SpaceX AI's Dyson Swarm. I think heavy launch is going to become, is already arguably part of a critical element of the stack now for the future of compute.
No, I think, Alex, all your points are right. And I think that you underestimate Sam at your tremendous cost. I think what Sam is sort of done again and again in our industry is see around corners that other people missed. He was trying to lock down data center capacity in space last year and the year before when all the other foundation labs didn't see it.
Really?
He was trying to lock down memory. Oh yeah, for sure.
I didn't know that.
His ability to look at an exponential and not be afraid of what it says in 2 or 3 years, while everybody else is afraid, saying, oh, we're not going to need that much, it is extraordinary. And his reach is extraordinary. And so with 100% certainty, I will tell you that he is exploring deals with every possible way to get access to compute and data center capacity. And I can say that having watched from a distance, I have no inside information, but I've been dazzled by that ability of his. I think you underestimate that guy. I mean, you would think it would be enough to build the fastest growing company in the history of capitalism to get a lot of respect, right? You think that might be a sufficient feather in your cap, but I think he will certainly be in conversations to get compute, whether it's in space or whether it's under the sea or whether it's on, using falling water, using geothermal. He will be in those conversations.
A few thoughts. There are lots of options. Yes, I agree with the contention that SpaceX is completely dominating mass to orbit. No question about it, including dominating historic mass to orbit. So if I'm Sam, I would be exploring probably a multi-channel strategy. I'd be exploring a deal with Elon and SpaceX to leverage SpaceX launch for my own Dyson Swarm. I would be exploring alternative launch capabilities. And then if you really believe, again, I think this is the elephant in this space room, if you really believe that we're on this singularity-esque exponential, then the fabs don't need to be on the ground. We can build fabs in space, and we may not be addicted to heavy launch 5 to 10 years from now. And if you're Sam and you're playing the long game, then you're
Mass
looking
drivers.
for you're looking for ways to build fabs on the moon and in LEO that don't need the space.
No, I think building a fab on land is hard enough for me.
Yeah. Zero G.
I mean, 40 or 50 billion in 5 years doing something nobody else, that one or two other companies in the world have ever successfully done. I mean, I can't really think hard about building fabs in space, knowing
That's
how
a
hard
great,
they are on Earth.
great segue to question 4.
What is China actually winning at when it comes to AI infrastructure?
They just don't have the compute.
Yeah, the dimension in which they've chosen to invest so far is in power infrastructure.
Yep.
And at that, they're just playing better than us right now. They have upgraded their grid. They have tremendous power infrastructure, and we've made bad decisions there. We are stuck with a grid that's built in the 50s. It's designed not for what we'd like it for today. And we have trouble politically at the local, at the municipal, at the state, at the federal level doing projects like infrastructure. And so what they have done is a tremendous amount of investment there. They are obviously starved of compute, but they're going to try and build on what they have, which is an absurd amount of power infrastructure.
I would perhaps just add to this. It's worth noting that in the past week or so, there's been quite a bit of public reporting about how China is operating proxy services that are selling American tokens to Chinese users at incredibly low prices, like 10x discounts in order to siphon the reasoning traces for training their own models. And that is quite disruptive, and Anthropic is pursuing that.
I think being a CEO is sufficient, man. I don't want the responsibility of
4 hours.
Easily.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. Be well now.
That was the ASI Pill Alex Wissner-Gross in conversation with Cerebras CEO Andrew Feldman, an Alex X Andrew special from the Moonshots Podcast EP 256. Subscribe for more. Until next episode.